Hello, and thanks for tuning in. So in this episode, I'll be buttoning up the engine with the installation of the engine bracket, the accessory bracket, and the drive belt components. I'll also be going through the transmission build and what it takes to fit to the 3.6 VR. For the folks playing at home, I will be putting in the description all the part numbers of the components used for the engine swap. And finally, this is a 9C Beetle, which actually shares the same platform as the Mark IV Golf. So I may often refer to the Beetle parts as Mark IV. All right, let's get into it. So to complete the inspection of the engine, off camera I took out the water pump, which actually was a good thing because all the blades of the impeller were broken, as this was the plastic version. So I've since replaced it with the Rev B version, which actually has a brass impeller. I've already done a little bit of work in terms of swapping to make it suitable to fit into the Beetle. This is the bracketry that you require to fit it into the Mark IV. Also here I fitted the accessory bracket, which is suitable to mount the original Beetle air conditioning and the power steering pump, which the Passats don't come with, or the CCs in the States. A bit of modification required to fit the bracket, which I'll show you in a minute. So here's the original bracket off the R36 Passat motor. Keen eye will notice that there is no bracketry for the power steering pump, and this is the mounting for the air conditioning, which is very different from the Mark IV air conditioner. Now, I originally selected this, which is off a Porsche Cayenne, and it did fit. No modifications to the bracketry required at all. The only reason why I changed to the early VR6 model accessory bracket is because these are the mountings for the air conditioning, which don't match the original Beetle, and I just figured that it's just easier to go with the original air conditioning from the Beetle. That way I can reuse all the hoses without having to reinvent the wheel, basically. So here's a bit more close-up of the accessory bracket. A little bit of clearancing is required here to clear this plug here, and also for the fuel rail off the 3.6, which the model this comes off doesn't have. So this is a photo off the internet of the accessory bracket. I've added the red dashed line just to show where you would actually need to cut in order to trim the accessory bracket. And on the side of the block of the 3.6, there is a small casting button located behind the water pump. This interferes with the accessory bracket, so you have the choice of either grinding this button down or clearancing the bracket. I chose to clearance the bracket. So here's comparing the original Mark IV on the right alternator with the Passat alternator, which came off the 3.6 VR6. Very similar in size. Fitment is pretty much what is identical. The only difference is that the Mark IV Beetle is a 90 amp, whereas the Passat VR6 is 180 amps. So the alternator does need a bit of clearancing. Well, I've actually had to clearance quite a fair bit. So on the underside, clearancing here, and this is to miss the plug near the fuel rail, and a little bit of clearancing on just the flanges here, just to get it to fit nice and snug correctly in location. This is from the AAA VR6, the 2.8 litre. So this is what, again, I've read on forums as to what would suit the setup. So that'll go here. So from random internet, I have checked this before. This is the path for the drive belt for AAA 2.8 litre VR6 Mark IV with air conditioning. So you can see it mimics the setup I've got here on the 3.6. So I've already ordered a replacement for the broken windage tray, but unfortunately it's been shipped from the US, which takes a while to get here. But I've decided to clean the sump anyway, so that when the new part arrives, I can button up the engine straight away. Okay, so after a bit of scrubbing, a little bit of wire wheel and some polish just to finish off, the sump's looking quite nice. As per the workshop manual, I've also just run a light wheel over to get all the remnants of the sealant. Now curiously, there was sealant which didn't look factory in here, which made me a little bit curious because there's really no reason to take these sumps off at 119,000 kilometers. But I've since discovered a bit of welding here, which to me definitely doesn't look factory, and a couple of scratches on the pan. So this was possibly in some sort of incident. There's a little bit of a dent there. So again, I don't know the full history of this engine, and so I'll get another windage tray. Plastic probably, because again this engine's just for street, it's not going to be raced. The transmission that's in the Beetle is a 5-speed and is coded O2J. So in order to fit this O2J transmission, I need to change the bell housing from the 4-cylinder bell housing to the VR6 bell housing. So comparing the VR6 bell housing on the left here to the 4-cylinder one on the right, you can see that the bolt locations when it mounts to the engine are slightly different. Unfortunately, I built the transmission before filming for the YouTube channel, but I must say it's not a simple task of just unbolting a bell housing and putting a new one on. Like every modern gearbox, the bell housing and the casing are all integrated into one, so it required actually pulling the whole gearbox apart, replacing with a new bell housing, and then reassembling the whole engine. The one benefit from this was that I could at least inspect all the gears and make sure that everything was okay. Then when I reassembled the gearbox, I put in new seals. And here's some stills of my gearbox just after cleaning and painting. So I'm just going to do a dry test fit of the transmission without the flywheel and clutch, just to make sure that the bell housing fits correctly and that there are no clearance issues. Okay, transmission's bolted up. Looks pretty good. Gap free. There's a little plate still to go here, so I'll have to scavenge that off the Beetle engine. So unlike the original Passat transmission, the O2A, O2J transmission I'm using doesn't have a smaller diameter portion to the end of the input shaft, and that would normally insert into the pilot bearing in the flywheel. So I'm just doing a check here just to make sure there's no clearance issues, because the end of the input shaft is actually just flush. So I'm just giving the crank a little bit of a turn just to make sure that the input shaft doesn't rotate in unison. That way I know they're not connecting. Okay, so it looks like the transmission and the engine are fitting together nicely. The motor's nearly done, apart from that pesky windage tray. So hopefully we'll be ready for fit up soon. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe and share.